Have you ever wondered what it feels like when a leader, someone seen as fearless, unshakable, faces a day that changes everything? What happens when strength meets sorrow, when power meets a moment so heavy it leaves even the strongest silent? And what if I told you that for Captain Ibrahim Traoré, there was one day so dramatic, so unforgettable, that it shook not just a nation, but the hearts of everyone watching? It started like any other day, calm on the surface, controlled, disciplined, the kind of day where nothing seems out of place. But beneath that calm, something was shifting, something no one could fully see yet. Early in the morning, whispers began spreading, quiet at first, almost unnoticeable. People talking in corners, soldiers exchanging looks, tension building in the air like a storm waiting to break. Have you ever felt that kind of silence? The kind that isn't peaceful, but heavy. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was already awake. Leaders like him don't sleep deeply when responsibility weighs on their shoulders. He could sense it too. Something wasn't right. Something was coming. And then the news arrived. Not loud, not dramatic at first, just a message, a report, a few words that carried unimaginable weight. Someone close, someone trusted, someone important had been caught in a situation no one expected. At that moment, everything changed. What would you do if you were in his place? Would you hesitate? Would you question what to do next? Or would you act instantly? He didn't hesitate. Orders were given quickly. Movements began, vehicles prepared, security tightened. The calm of the morning shattered into urgency. Every second now mattered. But this wasn't just another operation. This wasn't just strategy or command. This was personal. As he moved forward, those around him noticed something different. His face was calm, but his eyes told another story. Focused, intense, but carrying something deeper. Concern, determination, maybe even fear. But not the kind that weakens you, the kind that pushes you forward. Have you ever seen someone trying to stay strong? Not for themselves, but for everyone else. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Reports became more alarming. Details more painful. The reality of what was happening started to unfold, and then came the moment that no one was ready for. A confirmation, a truth so heavy. It silenced everything, the kind of silence where even time feels like it stops. People looked at each other, unsure of what to say. Some couldn't believe it, others didn't want to believe it. But Captain Ibrahim Traoré, he didn't have the luxury of disbelief. He had to face it, straight on. And this is where the story becomes something more than just an event. It becomes a moment that defines a person, because in that moment, when emotions could have taken over, when anger, grief, or shock could have broken him, he stood firm. But let me ask you something. Is strength always about not showing emotion, or is it about carrying that emotion and still moving forward? He didn't shout, he didn't panic, he didn't collapse. Instead, he made a decision that would change everything that followed. He moved closer to the situation, not from a distance, not through others, but himself. That's the kind of leadership people talk about, but rarely witness. As he approached, the atmosphere grew heavier. Soldiers stood alert, but you could see it in their faces. They knew this wasn't just another mission. This was something else, something bigger, something painful. And then he saw it. The reality. Right in front of him. No filters, no reports, no distance, just the truth. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. Have you ever faced a moment where everything becomes real all at once? Where there's no going back to how things were just minutes ago? This was that moment. For him, for everyone around him. Time didn't feel normal anymore. Seconds felt longer. Every movement felt heavier. And yet, decisions still had to be made. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Making decisions when your heart is heavy. He looked around, took everything in, and then he did something no one expected, something that would stay in people's minds long after that day ended. He stepped forward, not as just a captain, not just as a leader, but as a human being. And in that step, you could feel it. The weight, the pain, the responsibility, all coming together in one moment. People watching didn't just see authority, they saw emotion. Real, raw, unfiltered. And that's when the atmosphere changed again. because now it wasn't just about what had happened. It was about how he would respond. Would he let this moment define him, or would he define the moment? The tension reached its peak. Everyone was waiting, watching, holding their breath. And then he spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. And every word carried meaning. Every word carried weight. It wasn't just an order. It was a message of control, in chaos, of strength, in sadness, of leadership, in one of the darkest moments. But even then, you could feel it. This day was not over, not even close, because what happened next would turn this already dramatic day into something truly unforgettable, something no one could have predicted, something that would leave a mark, not just on him, but on everyone who witnessed it. And the question is, are you ready for what came next? Because what happened after that moment wasn't just unexpected, it was overwhelming. How does a leader continue when the weight of loss is still fresh? How do you stand tall when everything inside you feels like it's breaking? The air hadn't moved. It felt frozen. His words were still echoing in the minds of everyone present. And yet, something had shifted, not just in the situation, but in him. Because now, it wasn't just about control anymore. It was about endurance. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood there for a brief second longer than usual. To an outsider, it might have looked like nothing, but to those watching closely, it was everything. That pause carried emotion. That silence carried truth. Have you ever had to hold yourself together just long enough so others don't fall apart? That's what this was. But the situation didn't wait. Reality doesn't pause for grief. And just as quickly as that moment came, it moved forward again. More updates arrived, more details, and each one heavier than the last. The truth was becoming clear now. There was no misunderstanding left, no hope that this was just confusion or misinformation. This was real, and it was painful. Around him, people started to react. Some lowered their heads. Others stepped back, unsure of how to process what they were witnessing. Even the strongest among them felt it, because moments like this don't just affect one person. They ripple, they spread, they touch everyone. But here's the question. In a moment where everyone else begins to break, who holds the line? He did, but not in the way people expected, because strength doesn't always look like steel. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like eyes that refuse to look away, even when they want to. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't rush. He didn't lose control. Instead, he took a breath, a deep one, the kind of breath you take when you're standing at the edge of something life-changing. And then he moved again, closer. Every step now carried meaning. Every movement was watched. Every second felt heavier than the one before. And as he reached the center of it all, something happened that no report, no camera, no story could fully capture. He stopped right there, face to face with the reality of the day. And for the first time, the barrier between leader and human disappeared. Have you ever seen someone so strong allow themselves to feel not weakness, but truth? His expression changed, not dramatically, not in a way that shouted emotion, but in a way that revealed it. Subtle, but powerful. And in that moment, everyone understood. This wasn't just another day in command. This was a day of loss, a day of impact, a day that would never be forgotten. Someone nearby shifted as if about to say something, but stopped. Because what could you say in a moment like this? Nothing feels enough. Nothing feels right. And yet, something had to be done. Because even in sorrow, responsibility doesn't disappear. And that's when he did something that would stay with people forever. He didn't turn away. He didn't step back. He stood there, present, fully, as if to say, I'm here. Not just as a leader, but as someone who shares this moment with you. That kind of presence is rare and powerful. But the story doesn't end there, because as the minutes passed, something began to change again. Not in the situation, but in the people. They started to look at him differently now, not just with respect, but with connection, because they saw it. He was carrying the same weight they were, maybe even more. And yet, he wasn't letting it stop him. Isn't that what true leadership is? Not being untouched by pain, but moving forward despite it. The next decisions came quickly, clear, focused, necessary. Even in that emotional storm, his mind remained sharp. Instructions were given, actions were set in motion, and slowly, order began to return. But the feeling, that stayed. It lingered in the air, in the silence between words, in the looks people exchanged. This day had changed something, not just externally, but internally. For him, for them, for everyone. And then, as things began to stabilize, there was one final moment, one that no one expected, one that would define the entire day. He turned, just slightly, and looked back, not for long, just enough. But in that look, there was everything: respect, pain, memory, and something deeper. A promise. A silent one, the kind you don't say out loud, but carry with you. Have you ever made a promise?